Lesson B2, Multiculturalism. Beyond those cultural universals, language, tools, knowledge of survival, what makes a culture? And how does culture differ between groups, or change over time? When multiple ethnic or cultural groups live in the same society, how do they interact? Last time, we saw how sociobiology studies the way inherited genetics, our nature, gives us not just a particular height and eye color, but also affect our mental state and behavior. At the same time, learned culture, our nurture, has a far greater impact on human differences, shaping our society, and has shaped our lives since we became modern humans. Part of that culture is the social construction of our shared view of reality, including the way in which we separate people into groups. For the purposes of this class, racial groups are divided based on biological features, ethnic groups on family origin or cultural traits such as language or religion, and nationality on political citizenship. Each of these may tell us something about an individual, but all can be misconstrued into overgeneralized stereotypes. When we talk about a particular culture, we mean many different things, all of which make up the common ways of life of a group of people. This includes both material objects, like the jeans and cowboy hat associated with the cultural stereotype of the United States of America, and also non-material ideas and behavior, such as the American stereotype of being informal and flag-waving patriotic. This image shows a related stereotype about Americans, that we not only love our country, but we think the world revolves around it and nothing else matters. We are known for being ethnocentric, assuming our ways of life are not only the most important, but the only right way of doing things. This stereotype isn't true of everyone in the United States, and Americans are certainly not the only people to think this way. That is why it's so important to study other cultures. But material culture around the world has adapted in many different ways. Some use chopsticks to eat sushi, others use forks to eat spaghetti. Whether it's for warmth or to keep the sun off your face, American, Indian, German, and Tibetan cultures have each created their own traditional hats. Our buildings were often made from materials available nearby in pre-industrial societies, like this traditional Madeiran house, and may be adapted for local needs, such as this Indonesian home which is raised to allow livestock to live underneath. Similarly, a French adaptation to the heat and flood conditions in Louisiana gives us the classic New Orleans shotgun. Finally, our material culture reflects not just our needs, but also our aesthetic values, so color, too, can be an important feature. But the French aren't the only people whose culture is diffused out into other parts of the world. Ethnic cultures may develop among a local population, but cultural traits also move from place to place. In our increasingly globalized world, where ideas and materials and peoples move so easily, are some cultural structures like fast food, jeans, and cell phones becoming new cultural universals, at least among industrialized societies? Materials and ideas become a part of culture as those people begin to use them in some consistent way. Diamonds in the earth are just a mineral, but when we fashion them into a wedding ring, they take on new meaning. Diamond rings are more than just the materials that make them up. Non-material culture includes our use of symbols, such as the flag, the thumbs up, or diamond rings as a symbol of marriage engagement, which, by the way, is a fairly recent cultural tradition created by jewelry companies, but that's a story for another lesson. We take simple shapes and give them symbolic meaning, such as the sounds associated with our letters and punctuation. Put those letters together and you get words. Put those words together and you get language. And because culture is a social construction, language can change as symbols from a different ethnic group diffuse into a new culture, but also when people innovate to discover and invent entirely new symbols or ways of using them. Text-speech has added to our language by young people adapting to new technologies that required shorter writing and quick emotional cues. So how many different cultures are there? Well, it's difficult to say with blurry and overlapping borders that are constantly changing. Religion can be an important indicator of belonging to a certain group, but language even more so, because communication is what allows so much sharing of ideas and meaning. Ethnic groups most often share a language, so by that distinction, there are over 300 ethnic groups present in the USA and 7,000 in the world. Here in New Orleans, a place that has gone through many dominant languages from native tongues to French and English, but today about 10%, or 10 out of every 100 residents, don't speak English at home. In the world at large, due to globalized cultural diffusion, about half of the world's languages are spoken by less than 10,000 people each, and declining as young generations learn more common languages. English is the third most common language in the world, after Mandarin Chinese and Spanish, but for many bilingual individuals and international social structures, it has become a fairly standard second language. But even English sounds very different when spoken in different dialects, regional versions of a larger language. My partner is from London, the capital of the United Kingdom of England, Scotland, Wales, and North Ireland in the British Isles. When we first got together, we had many misunderstandings due to her British English not matching my American English. When she asked me if I took the rubbish bin out to the skip, I now know that she means the garbage can out to the dumpster. When I told her I was going to wear my pants to the restaurant, she laughed at me because it sounds like I was leaving my trousers behind and going out in my underwear. But language isn't the only subtle difference between American and British cultures. Non-material culture also includes norms of behavior, like which side of the road to drive on, right in the US, left in the UK, and how to greet one another. Europeans often greet one another with a kiss on the cheek rather than a hug or a handshake, which gave me a bit of culture shock. Greetings are an important social structure that function to give us an easy way past any awkward first moments. But when two people meet from different cultures, they have to learn how to appropriately behave in even the most basic interactions. After the midterm, you'll be writing a social life study about a real or fictional individual, and I'll be using Simba from The Lion King as an example to help get you started. Simba's life isn't affected much by any material culture, other than the paint that the baboon holy man put on his young face, but it does show some norms of their society, including that rite of passage and the structure of their social hierarchy, with the eldest son of the king taking over after his death. Norms can be informal, casual folkways that people generally see as normal but aren't specifically required behavior, such as shaking with the right hand or waiting to eat until everyone has been served. There are sanctions, both positive rewards and negative punishments for breaking norms, and anyone can sanction such informal norms with a smile or a glare. But there are also explicitly required formal norms, seen as rigid mores that can be officially sanctioned by authorities when you deviate from them. If you break an informal norm of politeness by burping at the dinner table, people might groan at you, but when you break a formal norm of law, such as running a red light, you can get arrested. Sometimes formal norms and informal norms don't match. Officially, the formal law says you cannot go faster than 60 miles per hour in a 60 mile per hour zone, but the informal norm is to drive between 60 and 70, and a police officer is unlikely to sanction you with a ticket at that speed.